Hello and welcome to the fourth episode of the Cheltenham Raw, brought to you by oddschecker and PricedUp. This is the show where we look back at the weekend's racing and we look forward to the Cheltenham Festival. Not that long at all left to go. We record this on the 6th of February in the wake of the Dublin Racing Festival. I'm your host, George Elek. I'm delighted to be joined by oddschecker's very own tipster, as I am for every episode of the Cheltenham Raw, Andy Holding. And oddschecker's very newest tipster, January signing, Laim Firkin. Liam, for those who have been watching Andy do this for about 5 years or so, but are yet to see your stuff or hear you talk about racing, can you give us a brief rundown as to who exactly you are?
Yeah, so it started a couple of years ago, George, over on Twitter. I started a page at Antipost Value, which was named Antipost Angle. Confusing, I know, but started producing content and tips and tracking those over on OLBG, and then was fortunate enough to win the Tipstar competition at the back end of last year. So that was at the December meeting, at Cheltenham, and it's just been a bit of a whirlwind since then, to be honest, George. So yeah, delighted to have joined the oddschecker Unlimited team alongside Ginger Joe's both golf and racing tips, and of course Andy. So yeah, you can find my content over there and my daily tips, as well as a anti-post angle column that I do with a view to the weekend each week.
So anti-post angle is the name. Is that your general bread and butter, looking at anti-post races, or do you cover all sorts?
Yeah, no, predominantly daily stuff. But however, yeah, I do try and find some value towards the weekend at the beginning of each week when markets are priced up around about a Tuesday or Wednesday. And of course, like everybody, I like to try and find a juicy price for the Cheltenham Festival. And
are you generally tipping big price things, or are you steaming into shorties?
No, very much be operating towards the bottom of the market. However, funnily enough, I did hear Andy speaking on the show earlier in the week with the review of the DRF about some of these shorties being good things, and perhaps a change of tact needs to be employed. And I'm of a similar thinking, to be honest, the likes of Sergino and Constitution Hidden alike. But no, generally bigger prices, a lot of variance, but the winners outweigh the losing runs overall in long term.
It wouldn't be the first time the Cheltenham Festival has gone to a bunch of short price favourites, bookies running for the hills, if that's the case. As I say, this show is sponsored by PricedUp, a new bookie on the scene. I would absolutely implore you to go and check them out and sign up for an account if you haven't already got one. Daily boosts across sport, meaning they're trying to make sure you can find some value across the board, but also because they're sponsoring the show, they're pushing out a lot of Andy's prices, a lot of Andy's tips. Fools, I reckon, but they're pushing them out for listeners and viewers of this show. So go and sign up for PricedUp. If you look under the boost section, you should see the boosts that I'll talk through over the course of the day today. But yeah, certainly a firm that I think are worth signing up for if you haven't done so already. The way this is going to work is this is a show where we are going to quickly review the DRF, not in any depth whatsoever. I know, Andy, you did it to death a bit earlier in the week in Racing Weekly, but we are going to touch on a couple of bits that we want to just pick out of the DRF. But because of the nature of the show, we are going to be previewing every race of the festival apart from the handicaps in detail at some point over the next few weeks. So we don't really want to go over old ground by, digging deep into Galopin Des Champs' run when we're just going to be covering the Gold Cup in a couple of weeks or so. So we're going to skip through that. And then we're going to go through the novice hurdles. So we'll do a Supreme preview, a Turners preview, and have a Bartlett preview. And then we've tacked the Triumph onto the end as well before we have a quick look ahead to this weekend's racing at Newbury and Warwick too. So loads to get through. So we better get up and running. Let's kick off with the DRF. And I've asked you guys both to pick out a horse that you just want to take out of the festival, really, in terms of taking out the DRF for a positive reason, that you can kind of make a case for them at the Cheltenham Festival. And Andy, no surprise, a horse that you've been sweet on this show previously, who impressed yet again last weekend. Ballyburn is the one you want to bring to the table here.
Yeah, I just want to mention a few really from the DRF with the ramifications, with the updated prices and where I think they should sit more than anything else. I'll start with Ballyburn because I actually thought after he won the other day that he would be a good bit shorter than his current market price. I actually think there isn't a huge amount of strength in depth in this category, whereas we'll talk about the novice hurdles a bit later on. I still think there's quite a bit of life and a bit of juice left in some of those races. But I thought Ballyburn was really good. I did fancy him to win on Saturday. Don't get me wrong; it wasn't as if we're going in there thinking, "Oh, this is a massive test that he's got to come through." It was more to do with how will he jump, and more predominantly how he would see out the trip and whether he looked better over the 2 mile 5, which I think he did. I think he answered every call. Thought he jumped really well. That could have done with going a stride or two quicker for him. I think he was just a little bit keen, but that was because of the pedestrian nature of the race. But other than that, he never looked like making a mistake. Thought he was very agile when he got in tight, and he was good when he was long. But I like the work he did from the back of the last when Crow Park came up alongside him, and you thought, right, here we go, let's see what he's made of. And then he put 7 or 8 lengths between himself and a strong stayer, a good graded horse. And we had in Pede Pass a Grade 1 winner over hurdles, well back in third. If you want even more substance, Champ Kylie, who was really impressive on his debut, was well beaten as well. So I think it was quite a strong race. The time was good. It wasn't as good as the time figure that he produced when he won on debut or when he was second to Sergino, but it was solid. And to my eyes, the further he's going to go at Cheltenham, better he looks. He's got Dancing City, his main rival from the same stable. I think he's a sexier, classier horse than him. I think the ground would need to be heavy or soft, really soft for Dancing City to come into his own. But beyond that, you've got Croke Park 4th favourite, and he's already beaten him pointless. Django Bay got beat by handstands the other day. He's a 10-to-1 shot. So you look at this market, you think, well, what's going to beat Ballyburn? As I said, it's all about price, really. Some of them went a bit too short, like your Capec de Boards and your Final Demands. I think all the value dried up on those quite quickly. Whereas this fella, he's still hovering around the 2-to-1 mark, which I thought was more than fair. I thought he'd be about a 5-to-4 shot myself.
Yeah, 7-4 is the price with PricedUp about Ballyburn for the Brown advisory there. So as Andy says, getting 7-4 about what he thinks should be at least a 5-to-4 shot. Liam, how about you? What was the horse you took out of last weekend's racing?
Yeah, just to touch on Ballyburn, some of the race IQ data I find quite interesting, but I think you have to apply context if, like me, you're using things like length gain jumping and whatnot. Because if you look at that race in its entirety from a race IQ perspective, he lost an average of 5 miles per hour at a lot of his fences. His length gain jumping was in the negative, and Croke Park made up 11 lengths jumping throughout that race. However, when you apply that to these longer distance races, all the lengths that Croke Park made up over his obstacles, he was then just taken aback once he jumped them to ensure that he settled, didn't get too fizzy, and obviously didn't basically end his race too early in the trip. So whatever he was making up over the obstacles, he was then giving back on the flat. So I think perhaps if, like me, you're using data like that, it's best to apply context to it. The one that I wanted to talk about, however, George, was in the juvenile hurdle. I've got a little bit of a left field angle into the second place there, Galileo Dame for Joseph O'Brien. Now, I think that she's obviously improved considerably from her first run. She was beaten 2 lengths by Wendrock. She has reversed that form and then finished 12.5 lengths ahead of him on the weekend, albeit again, Wendrock's probably got other targets further down the line and more likely to be aimed at the Boodles. He did make a bit of a poor mistake. It was then essentially looked after. But Galileo Dame, I think she could potentially go down the mare's novice route because she's only had 2 starts. It would be difficult to get another start into her prior to qualify for the Boodles. And what sort of mark is she going to get for finishing second anyhow in a Grade 1? But she doesn't lack racing kind of intellect or experience because she's had 8 starts on the flat. She is still a bit keen over hurdles. She probably would like more runs in her over obstacles. However, she would be getting a £10 allowance from most of the field. I'm not that strong on those at the top of the markets. So given the fact that she'd only have to carry 10 stone 6, versus the 11 stone 2 that the others would be carrying, I think that's a nice angle and opportunity really for Joseph to send her down this route. And the final thing was just how she finished the race. She was still closing on Hello Neighbour, and just her attitude throughout it, I thought that she would really relish the kind of stiff test of that Cheltenham Hill. And I know she's been priced up in a few places. I'm not sure what she is with PricedUp, and perhaps you'd have to ask for us, George, but I think she's certainly on my radar and one that I'm considering for that race, and I'd be happy to take a swing at a double figure price in the hope that Joseph O'Brien goes down that route rather than to the Triumph, which I think would be a far easier task than taking on the likes of East India Dock and Lalamba.
Yeah, a few firms are out, kind of 16 to 1, 14 to 1 is the mark. I've messaged the guys at PricedUp, and I'm sure they'll be on the case as it stands. And by the time this goes out, hopefully it'll be up on site. And generally, they're looking after you guys with prices. So hopefully it should be up at a similar price point there. Galileo Dame, an interesting angle from Liam to kick off his input into the Cheltenham Raw. Andy, there were a couple of others you said you wanted to pull out too.
Yeah, I really like Emmett Mullins's horse that won the 2 mile handicap on the Sunday, McClory. I've been a big follower of this horse, or big fan of him, and followed him all the way from the start of the season when he was second to Tap on the Go at Limerick in a good figure race. I've watched the sort of like progression he's made along the way, and I kind of botched up really on Sunday because I went for James's Gate, who'd beaten him the time before at Punchestown, just on a point of value, really. McClory was sort of 7-2, 4-1 in the morning, and James's Gate was not 8-9-1. So I thought I'll go with James's Gate. It's the same form lines. I'm pretty sure one of them will win. I tipped James's Gate. It was a non-runner, literally within about half an hour of me sending my column over, and I ended up having no selection on the race and saw McClory go and win. I didn't actually back him either on Sunday, which is really annoying. He was 10-1 Andy Post, so I kind of missed all the value. So it was a bit of a dagger through my heart to see him win, but I was really impressed with him because I thought he won despite the trip. He looks as over to me anyway. He wants minimum 2.5 miles, but because I think he's so well handicapped and he's got so much potential and so much quality, he was able to still beat a pretty competitive handicap field in the manner that he did. I thought he idled once he hit the front. He's tailor-made for that 2.5 mile boys race, the Martin Piper race, which of course JP's done really well with in recent times. One of the gambles of the meeting last year just came and stuck. Waterford Whispers 20s into 9-4. Year before he won it with a Roco, and Early Doors won it for Joseph several years prior to that. So it's a race that's quite dear to JP's heart. I think he's got the ideal candidate here with McClory. And the one good thing about him winning the other day, which wouldn't have escaped the attentions of anyone who was looking at their connections, was he went up from 120 to 132. He wouldn't have got in with 120. They needed to do something drastic about that. He's now 132. The British handicap will probably adjust him to say 135. Usually put a bit of extra on, don't they, just for good measure, which will definitely get him into any handicaps at the Cheltenham Festival. I don't think he's a county hurdle horse, but I'll be surprised if he's in a Martin Pipe horse. So yeah, he's the other big takeaway from that meeting for me.
Yeah, right about the 8-1 mark for McClory there for the Martin Pipe, another one from Andy to take out the DRF. Well back the night before and went off 3-1 and justified the money on Sunday. Let's get into the novice hurdles then, because that's what this show is all about. And we're going to kick off with the Supreme, where Kopek de Board, after that scintillating display on Saturday, is now the 6-5 favourite ahead of Romeo Coolio and Salvatore Mundi, both 6-1. The New Lion 11-1. Work Ahead 11-1. Kawabunga 14-1. Cade Dorhe 16s. Kiss Will 16s. Lalamba 16s. Obviously, a fair few of these won't be running here. Andy, let's come to you first with your, how you mentioned a second ago that maybe the value's been taken out of Kopek de Board after Saturday, but visually very impressive on Saturday. How did that stack up in the numbers?
Yeah, very good. He now goes to the top of our tree on the overall data that we've got. When we award speed figures for each individual performance, Romeo Coolio was the standout prior to the DRF. We were kind of waiting for something to really challenge him, and not only did Kopek de Board challenge him, he went ahead of him with what Commandante described as a pretty spectacular performance. I mean, he ran with the choke out for the thick end of 1.5 miles, and yet still had the extra powers of reserves to pull even further clear when he should have been slowing down, not quickening up. He jumped obviously a lot better than he did on his debut, which was a massive advantage. It's going to be a massive advantage to him at Cheltenham. That was always the danger. If you backed him prior to the weekend, would he jump as poorly again if you're an anti-post player? But now you've got the confidence that he's jumping's no problem. It's easy to see why he's favourite. The only reason I think he's poor value now in comparison to a horse like Ballyburn and perhaps Final Demand is that he has got obviously 1 or 2 little temperament issues. He was a bit jiggy beforehand. Looks a very sort of he's easily affected by sort of the surroundings and what's going on in the crowd. And obviously the electricity of Cheltenham could easily just make him boil over. So you definitely want to be playing him on the way to the start and to see him in the prelims, almost backing him down when he gets down to the post. And for that matter, you get a chance to look at the full field, what the ground is, but more importantly, taking the price around about even money now makes no sense when you can probably back him at even money when you've got all the information you need. So yeah, of all the ones we're going to talk about now, from a price angle, I just don't think there's any rush to back Kopek to board. But I totally agree with him with the price he is. It's just not a bet for me right at this very moment in time.
Yeah, the guys are priced up. Agree. Kopek to board is kind of even money across the board on the oddschecker grids, but they've boosted out to the 6-5 price, which is the best in the market. Liam, you mentioned a second ago that you generally like to bet at the bottom end of the market, but maybe there are some short price horses that are value for the festival. Do you think this is one of them?
I don't think it's value. I'm absolutely in the same camp as Andy with regards to Kopek de Board. He was very impressive at the Dublin Racing Festival. But no, I did have a swing and have had a swing at one, both in my oddschecker anti-post book, and also I've got a 6-week tipping vlog series currently going out with Racing TV. Now that goes out across social media. So when I suggested that Regent Stroll was potential value at 50 to 1, I can tell you for a fact the feedback was honest, shall we call it. Nobody else was in the same camp as me. However, he does have form with Good and Clever from his first start at Newbury. I know that horse, as will all of them, have come on a lot since that run, and you can't take the form literally. But he beat him by nearly 10 lengths when he was made far more use of. He was ridden more forward. He showed everything that you'd want in a Supreme. He made an absolute howler of the second last, booted the hurdle to the floor, and then still gathered himself together and ran on strongly to win by nearly 10 lengths. Of course, Kopek de Board has then beat the same horse, Good and Clever, by over 22 lengths and very easily. But I think there's a lot more to come from Regent Stroll. I'm really excited to see him out this Sunday in the listed race at Exeter. And I do think that he potentially has all the attributes you need for a Supreme in terms of he has the gears, the turn of foot, and also he will certainly stay, given the performances that we've seen from him so far. Of course, he boiled over in the Challow. That would be a concern, not too dissimilar to Kopek de Board, as Andy just touched on. You'd want to see him settle a little bit better, even if he is ridden forward. But I think he could throw his hat in the ring as a potential bit of competition, really, to Kopek de Board this weekend. So I'm hoping for a big run. And look, if you're playing at those sort of prices, 50 to 1 and backing him each way, it's a pretty windy market in behind the favourite. And you're getting a 9 to 1 winner for a place, should he follow him home or finish third. Paul Nicholls has hinted at the fact he will have an entry and he could well go here. That's enough for me. He's won the race twice before. He's not having the best of seasons. But he's clearly the only graded animal who's up and coming from that yard. So I'm still firmly happy with the slip I'm holding for him.
I'm afraid to say 25 to 1 we priced up, so chopped in half since the initial tip went out, but still 25 to 1 about Regent Stroll, the one at a bigger price that Liam has plucked out there. Andy, before we move on, if you're not backing the favourite, you've spoken in positive terms about a couple in here and behind. Who do you think's the standout value at this stage?
Well, if you're looking for sort of collateral form lines and judging one horse against another, I know that's a very spurious way of doing it, but at least Carnac finishing second to Kopek de Board give us some idea of how good Romeo Coolio is, because he beat him 49 lengths when he won the time before. So, there is a crumb of comfort to take out of the results from the DRF if you're a Romeo Coolio fan. Look, I think Romeo Coolio is still a good, solid each way second favourite. I think he's likely to be in the first 3 or 4. On the day, whether he's good enough to beat Kopek is open to question, but he's got Cheltenham Festival experience. Unlike Kopek, he's very much a horse that's calm and switched off, and he does everything relatively in a sort of efficient fashion. So I'm still happy with the bet there. The thing that I think has got to develop in the next 2 or 3 weeks, which will come out in the wash, and I don't think it's going to be necessarily performance-wise on the track, is how Willie Mullins goes about, again, shuffling his pack accordingly. And more importantly, how someone like JP approaches the 2 races that we're going to cover. Obviously, he's got the New Lion, one of the main market leaders for the Turners. But he's also got this Cowabunga as well, who, as speed figure buffs, got a very good figure for when he beat William Money and Cocktail Brute at Fairyhouse last time out. Now that was right up there with some of the best maiden stroke novice hurdle times that we've got all season. So he's clearly a graded horse in weight, and he ran behind Kopek the first day, giving him sort of like a 20 length head start if you looked at where they were going past the winning line, and then he got beat 5 lengths and he was running him down. So he's not a million miles off Kopech. Now, surely that you look at that, and think, well, JP's never going to run the Real Line and Cowabunga in the same race. He's got an opportunity to run one of them, more likely Cowabunga, you would imagine, in this, because he's yet to run beyond 2 miles, whereas the New Line's already run over 2.5, and he's proven over the trip. So if he was all of a sudden going to parachute himself into this race, I think he's definitely one to add into the equation. He's currently sort of 20 to 1 top price, generally 14, 16. It wouldn't surprise me if Cowabunga was to actually doing a bit of a U-turn and come here instead of maybe going to the Turners. So I'm just sort of like keeping options open with him. I think the non-runner no bet scenario with him is not a bad option, because if you're right. You look at you'll be staring down about a 5-6 to 1 shot on the day if he does decide to come here.
Yeah, Cowabunga 14 to 1 for the Supreme as it stands. Should point out, priced up, not NRNB, not no run, no bet yet. So if you do bet one of these horses, we're priced up now and they don't run, then that bet will be a loser. And we'll keep you up to date as and when priced up do go non-runner, no bet. On to the Taylors, the Turners, not the Taylors. The Turners, not as hard. I mean, the race changes name so often, it could be the Taylors next year, to be honest. Where we have Final Demand is the 21 to 10 favourite ahead of the New Line at 3 to 1. Kopech to board 9 to 2 in case the plans change and he is sent to the Turners. Cowabunga, as Andy mentioned, 15 to 2, suggesting the plan at the moment is for him to run in the Turners. The Yellow Clay is 9 to 1 here, favourite for the Albert Bartlett after some money this week, even though Gordon Elliott came out and said that if the festival was to be now, then he would run in the Turners. But how much faith do you place in trainers' words at this stage, a month out of the festival? Who can say? James's Gate, 12 to 1, Potter's Charm, 14, 6 Mile Bridge, 14. Again, Andy's given us his thoughts on this race a couple of times already on the show. So, Liam, I'll come to you first. How do you assess the Turners at this stage?
Not too dissimilar to Kopech to boards. I think Final Demand's a worthy favourite. It's interesting that all the money has come for the Yellow Clay, for the Albert Bartlett, because, of course, Connections also have wingmen, and he's only had the 4 starts and not yet qualified for any of the handicaps if they're looking to go down that route. I thought potentially what Gordon Elliott said would end up becoming fact, and perhaps he would stay here, but he's evidently perhaps been scared off by that performance on the weekend. I think the way in which you can see the current favourite being beat would be due to the fact that the races run a little bit more slowly, and obviously they won't go a huge pace like they will the first race on the Tuesday in the Supreme. And I think a turn of foot could potentially be his undoing, but he does look a very solid favourite at this moment in time. The likes of the New Lion are probably the horses in behind that would be of most interest to me. There's nothing really from left field that I can currently see in this race. How JP splits his up, as Andy alluded to, we don't know. There is the fact around the New Lion that people seem to think that it's a definitive, an absolute definite that he's going for the Turners based upon some sort of agreement or fancy price slip that obviously his prior owner is holding on to. He did say Darren Yates did say to Nick Luck that there was some sort of kicker or some sort of bonus within the deal for the purchase of the horse by JP. That doesn't mean to say that is the case. It could be that he gets a portion of prize money. I'm completely speculating. Who knows? So that could mean if he goes on to win at Cheltenham in whatever race that may be, then there's some sort of added bonus or incentive there for him. So he could easily still turn up in the Supreme potentially. I know that Dan Skelton's poured a little bit of cold water on that, but who knows, with the green and gold, they could turn up anyway.
Indeed, yeah. That the price, Andy, for Final Demand with priced up 21 to 10 is the biggest again out there, boosted from 15 to 8 to 21 to 10. How do you assess that price?
I certainly think it's value. I think it's on the same lines as Ballyburn. Really, he's the right favourite. I think he's got more substance to his certain performance in the DRF than the New Line's Challow Hurdle win. I'm still not convinced about the Challow Hurdle anyway, but regardless of the previous data and roll of honour with the Challow Hurdle, I think Challow Hurdle's a poison chalice if you win it in regards to Cheltenham Festival winners, particularly this race. So I'd want to probably avoid the New Lion. I think Final Demand is the stronger of the two. So that price we're priced up, I think he's not going to last too long. And as I just mentioned, I'm not sure what JP is going to do here. He's got the New Line. If he's got the New Line, which is his number one, why would he run Cowabunga in it as well? I just want to keep on side with Cowabunga, basically, whichever race he runs in. Like I say, if you can get a non-runner no bet with both of those two options, then that puts you in a good position. My personal anti-post recommendation for both this race and the Albert Bartlett with the yellow clay. So I'm always going to lose one way or the other. If he doesn't come here, which will be a bit sad for the actual race itself, then I've still got him in the Albert Bartlett, and I think he'd be favourite in that. If that's the route that's actually going to go down, so be it. Personally, I think he's good enough to run in this. I don't really know why they're all of a sudden, after one run of one horse, all running scared. It would be unlike Gordon Elliott to run scared of one horse in particular. So yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see how that race develops in time and how the markets and the ramifications of final arrangements work themselves out. But yeah, I'm certainly happy with the yellow clay bet. But if I wasn't, then I'd probably be looking to get with Cowabunga in some way.
You say that yellow clay is good enough to run here. I mean, what race do you think he's more? What race do you think he's more suited to? Do you think the stiffer test or the grind of the Albert Bartlett?
Well, he's shown quite a few facets to his game, hasn't he? So far this season, the yellow clay. I think he's been massively underestimated. He's a bit misunderstood. I think people just see him as this sort of grinder that he's very one-dimensional. But the data that I've got in him as well, in slowly run races, he's shown a turn of foot to get himself out of a hole, like he did when he won at Navan 2 runs ago. And then he showed grit and determination in desperate conditions that day at Naas to win the Lawlers. I mean, good horses were strung out like washing that day. I know Jasmine DeVoe didn't jump very well, etc. And a couple of horses chucked away their chances. But there was a lot of good horses beat a long way out that day, and he just kept grinding it out. So on that basis, you think, well, he has got the stamina as well for sort of 3 miles if they want to go that route. To be honest, I haven't really got a problem, whichever one they decide. I think he's good enough to run in both. Probably the easiest opportunity or the best opportunity for him, if you wanted to be brutally honest, is to avoid Founderman Man, the New Line, and Cowabunga and running the Albert Bartlett, because I don't think we've got any superstars in that category. So if that's the way the Elliott team are thinking, on the same lines as they are with Brighter Days Ahead in the Champion, looking to run that in the mares and get an easier cop out, and that's their prerogative, isn't it?
Well, that takes us nicely into the Albert Bartlett, where the yellow clay is 130 favourite ahead of Final Demand at 9-2. The Big Western is 7-1, Jet Blue 14-1, Wingmen 16-1, Belliano 20-1, Derry Hasten Paddy 20-1, Jacks Junior 20-1, 22-1 bar those. How do you see the Albert Bartlett market as it stands?
I think over the years the race has changed a lot, and obviously you're seeing class come to the fore, where the common, probably now misconception, was that you needed a hardy horse who's had plenty of race experience. We've seen over the last few years that the class has kind of won the day. So yeah, I think the angle that Andy's mentioned as to whether the Elek comes here, he will certainly be the classiest animal that I think that I've seen this season in the Albert Bartlett division. I'm not sure if ground will play a part in as to where they choose to go with him. If it was to come up heavy on the Wednesday, would they perhaps then go to the shorter trip? Who knows? But in terms of everything else in behind, there's nothing that's really kind of floating my boat, to be honest. The Big Western was quite impressive, and then Mozzie's sister, who was in behind her, ran a nice race at the Dublin Racing Festival. A mare in this field, I'm not sure if that is something to consider. I'm not sure what the strike rate would look like in terms of even mares that are placed in this race over the years. I don't imagine it's a huge pool size to pull from. But over the last few seasons, winners of SP'd at 33s, 18s, I think, for the last 3 renewals. So there'll still be decent prices and potentially some value even on the day. So for me, I just need to look a bit harder and see if I can find something to take the likes of the Yellow Clay on should he turn up.
Andy, anything? There's another horse in the race that I know that you are keen on, Jet Blue, who was last seen winning here in December. And again, priced up a push Jet Blue out from 12-1 to match the industry best 14-1. What about Jet Blue has got you thinking that he could be a bit of value here?
Yeah, obviously, for the purposes of doing this podcast, I've revisited the Albert Bartlett markets and gone up and down them again, and try to almost look at it with a blank canvas. The Yellow Clay, if he comes here, as Liams has said, you can't really knock him in any way, shape or form, can you? He's just a quality horse in the weakest of the 3 divisions that we're covering. Fond Man, I think he's 1,000,000 to go in this. William Mullins, straight after the race of the day, almost laughed at the interviewer to suggest that they'd cut and step him up to 3 miles. Not overly convinced of the Big Westerners form lines, and then you get getting into the horses that refugees out of the DRF, the likes of Wingman and Jasmine DeVoe. So it's sandwiched in between him is JetBlue, and he's almost the forgotten horse, isn't it? There's a lot of recency biases in this game that you have to sort of dust off your memory bank to recount what horses do. But that JetBlue was really impressive when he won here in December. I mean, he's won over the course and distance, which is not to be sniffed at. His time figure was good. His back end sectionals are very good. He was quicker than the 2 mile or 2.5 mile races on the card from 3 out and on the final circuit. And the form has been boosted by the third horse home that day, who went on to win the River Don the other day and beat Moon Rocket. So was it the yellow car? Was it?
That's the one.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. So when you sort of like weigh it all up and you look at the nuts and bolts of that victory, you think, well, it's hard to sort of knock him. He's going to go straight to the festival, providing they can keep all wheels on him between now and then, and he comes here with a fit bill of health. I don't see him not running well. Seems to handle most conditions. Being a French horse, obviously the softer the better, but he is a proven stayer. So look, with him, you know he stays 3 miles. You know he handles the track, and he's almost certain to run. So I thought, looking at the current market I've got in front of me here, he's the only value I could see left of a proven horse. With quality track and quality graded form.
Yeah, 14-1 JetBlue for the Albert Bartlett, one for Andy at this stage. Finally, before we get into this weekend's racing, a quick look at the Triumph, where again we've done this to death a little bit, Andy. But Lalamba 2-1, East India Dock 9-4. For those who haven't been watching the show, Andy very much in the Team India East India Dock. And the way the market is going, he thinks should be favourite, and the way the market is going could be relatively soon, given how close they now are. Hello Neighbour is the third favourite at 5-1. Lady Vega Allen 12-1, 16-1. Palladium and Galileo Dame 20-1 bar. And I'll come to you quickly first because I know Hello Neighbour obviously won last weekend, but I was going to ask you before you mentioned it to me that how did that time stack up compared to the top two? But you've already intimated to me that there was nothing to get you concerned as an East India Dock backer.
Yeah, that was the only slight issue I had, or doubt at the nagging at the back of my mind, that the Spring Juvenile, that's ended running a different name now, but the old Spring Juvenile at the DRF would throw up something that came from left field and made me think twice again about my sort of assessments of East India Dock. And following the running of it, I've got no hesitation to suggest that the winner will definitely come from Lalamba and East India Dock. They just weren't good enough, those Irish horses. I just had a feeling about that race going into it. They didn't look anything special. The numbers they've been doing this year have been miles off the St. Lucy's, the Lady Vega Allens, the Hello Neighbours of this world. Are just not the normal standard you'd see from an Irish based set of juveniles. And if that's the best that they've got, and Hello Neighbour is top of them, then I'm pretty convinced that the English are going to win it this year. We've got two outstanding candidates. We've got one of the best juveniles I've ever come across in the times I've been working and doing numbers at Cheltenham. Thanks to the two colleagues, obviously, that helped me and supply me with the times. East India Dock's right up there with the very, very best, the Arconnors and the Defi Desoys and Marshboroughs and Lossie Mouse of this world. He's just freakishly good. He's brilliant on the sort of jumping IQ, which I'm sure Laim will touch upon. And then we've got Lalamba, who could be absolutely anything. He could be just as good. So, yeah, I think the market will probably just settle itself down and revert to the way I think it'll go nearer the day. But yeah, I couldn't be back in Hello Neighbour even at 5-1. I think that's the worst value out of the DRF that we saw.
And then you mentioned in previous shows that the time that Lalamba posted wasn't great, but that can be caveated by you can only it's one
still
race.
Still better than Hello Neighbours.
Well, there you go. But does the fact that St Pancras, who kind of ran down the field that day, then turns up at and wins the Scottish Triumph on Saturday at 33-1. That's the first bit of collateral form we've seen out of that race. Does that maybe tell us a little bit that even if the form, it's the time itself may not have been great, it's still the quality of the race might turn out to be impressive?
Oh, absolutely. Look, I've said all along that Lalamba, he's obviously going to improve on that number that he did at Ascot. He can only run to the time that the race allowed him to. That doesn't mean to say that's as good as he is, but with Hello Neighbour now, he's run twice. So you think, well, he's run the same figures twice, so there's a chance that he won't go beyond that. But it's quite obvious that Laim was a miles better horse than that figure suggests at Ascot. I'm not, complete foolish, and I haven't got any kind of flexibility in my sort of way of analysing a race like that. The one thing I will say is that St Pancras probably would have finished third, had three horses not fallen at the last at Musselburgh. And Harry Durham's horse Vivani, who was 10 lengths back or relatively close up third, fell in over the line yesterday at 3 or 4 to 1 on at Ludlow. So it won, and there's 2 winners out of the race, but there's been mitigating circumstances how those 2 horses have won. So you can look at it both ways, really, depending on how if you wanted to be scathing or do it as a self-fulfilling prophecy kind of thing. So yeah, look, I'm a big fan of Lumber. Don't get me wrong. I think he's a smart horse, but I've said all along, there's no way that he could be a 6 to 4 shot based on what he's done currently at the moment in comparison to East India Doc, who we have as one of the best juveniles that we've seen for the past decade. It just doesn't make sense.
Liam, do you see it the same way?
Yeah, there's no point in me kind of just parroting what Andy said, but the market for me has got this wrong. One is based all on potential and one performance. The other has got substance. We've seen it twice at Cheltenham. I would like to try and offer something, though, to this sort of division, but it would be more towards the Boodles. There was a nice horse, or a horse with decent form from France. Obviously, viewers will probably have to go and look into it in a little bit more depth. But Matrion Science had his first start up at Musselburgh on the weekend. He would definitely need to brush up on his jumping. He did jump out to his left slightly. He was a little bit guessy at a few of them, but he did travel very well through the race. Now, his last start in France, he won. Since then, the second has come out and finished second in a grade 3. The third has gone on to win a listed race, and the fourth from that race has won on 3 occasions, including a listed race also. Obviously, all these juveniles will be progressing at different rates. They'll all have different ceilings, but I imagine they'll probably go down the Boodles route with him, so maybe he's one for people's radar. But saying that, obviously that race is a tricky puzzle to solve. But yeah, with regards to the Triumph, I'm in complete agreement with absolutely everything Andy said, so no point in me repeating him.
Good stuff. Let's look ahead to this weekend's racing then. We're not going to go through all the cards, but we'll go through the cards of both Newbury and Warwick, but we'll pick out a couple of big races and then ask the guys at the end for any other business ahead of the weekend. So now we'll look at the 225 at Newbury, the Denman Chase, where Brave Man's Game is the 2 to 1 favourite ahead of Jello at 7 to 2. Hitman 11 to 2, Le Patron 13 to 2, Gar Law 15 to 2, Fugitive 9 to 1, Sam Brown 11 to 1, Eldorado Allen 14 to 1. Liam, I'll give you first run. Who do you fancy the prices?
I don't think any horse can win this race, George. The irony that Brave Man's Game is favourite, who's a soft finisher in a race named after the great Denman. I think he's just a little bit broken, isn't he, since that second to Galloping de Champs. He had to go to the well that day, and I'm not sure he really wants to go through that pain barrier again. Lovely horse who travels well, nice into his races, good jumper, but I just couldn't have him at the price. Jello obviously underperformed, but I think he'll prefer coming back left-handed here. The one that kind of did spark a bit of interest was Le Patron. He would need to step up on what he did 2 starts ago when he was a good winner here at Newbury by 7 lengths. Obviously, this is a far more difficult assignment for him. I'll probably keep an eye on markets and see if there's a bit of a drift. I just feel that I've missed the early prices and he's probably a little bit short for me to be getting involved with. So sorry to start off with a no bet, but that's pretty much where I'm at the moment, George, with this race. There's nothing that really takes my fancy.
Andy, you can always find us a bet.
Oh, definitely, yeah. I'm surprised that for a starter, there's all 8 runners are going. I mean, that's great, isn't it? I'll be reluctant to put up something like Hitman early on in the week, on a Monday or Tuesday, when you think, there's only going to be 6 or 7 runners, and most bookmakers with the anti-post rules nowadays tend to only offer you 2 anyway, when there's a chance of it likely being 7. But lo and behold, unless Fugitive goes to Warwick, we're going to get 8 runners here, which is great for Hitman supporters, because albeit he finds winning difficulty nowadays, he's always bang there, and he's pretty much sure to get you a return on the place part of the bet. He hasn't got any Shiskin in this race this year, and Shiskin was the only one to beat him last year. Comes off the back of a perfectly respectable run at Ascot. Yard could do when he'd been in slightly better form. You could say that about Braveman's Game, and there's doubts about him, and he's 2-1, so you're getting 3 times the price. About a horse who always seems to, offer his best. He likes Newbury. Ground's okay for him. So yeah, I'd suggest he's cracking each way bet 11-2.
Cracking each way bet there. Hitman, the selection for Andy in the Denman Chase. On to the Game Spirit now, where Sergino is the 2-1 favourite, Matata 15-2, Edward Stone 9-1, Liberty Hunter 12-1, Master Chewy 22-1, 25-1, JPR 1. Now this is the Cheltenham Roar, and normally we talk about the Cheltenham potential, the festival potential, I should say, of the races we're talking through. I didn't really bother for the Denman Chase. I can't really imagine either of you were going to realistically put anything up there for the festival, but that is absolutely not the case with Sergino. Clearly one of the most fancied runners of the festival. So Liam, how do you find the 2-1 on Saturday and the heavy odds on price for March as well?
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing him out again. Obviously, he was exceptional, wasn't he, in the Wayward Lad over Christmas? Really took Ballyburn out of his comfort zone, but to be expected over the 2-mile trip for him. But the fact that he's now being thrown into this Grade 2 on his second start, I think it just shows what they think of him. It's a little bit reminiscent for me in terms of the Cheltenham market of El Fabiolo and John Bon. However, roles are reversed slightly. So Majborough, I think, is a little bit similar to El Fabiolo in the sense that his kind of engine just wins the day for him. That's what gets him through his race. He can kind of brush through and be a bit scruffy over some of his obstacles. I think he will obviously end up in trip in time. Unfortunately, he's not coming up against a John Bon type on this occasion. Majborough Sergino is extra special. I think the price is fair for the weekend. I'd take it. He's definitely going to get a race because Matata's certainly going to bolt out from the front, you'd think, as he usually does. And Liberty Hunter in this field is probably an improving horse. So potentially he could follow him home if you look at some sort of forecast if Matata was to kind of fall in a hole by going off too quickly. But yeah, I'm really excited to see Sergino again. I think everybody is. And yeah, the clash in March is pretty mouthwatering.
Yeah, 4-6 Sergino, 9-4 Majborough, and Loda Sud, who we'll talk about in a second, who's the short price favourite for the Kingmaker at Warwick, is 12-1 third favourite. 12-1 bar those, but taking those three as the market principles at the prices currently, Liam. I mean, I know it may not be your bag backing a 4-6 shot, but as it stands now, if you were given a free £10 bet, where would you be looking?
It would absolutely be with Sergino. I think he's got all the attributes to be a very, very, very good horse. I think he jumps more soundly. Obviously, the sample size is small, having only seen him once, but he would be my idea of the winner. Yeah, I think that his jumping will potentially take Majborough out of his comfort zone. And I think when Majborough gets a little bit more company upsides him, I suppose you could look at that in one or two ways. Maybe that will help him and he will concentrate a bit more to jump better. I think it could disrupt him even further. And if he makes any big mistakes going the clip they're going to go, Sergino will certainly be waiting to mop it up. But I think that's a fair price, and I'm sure people will be loving to do the little roll-ups. PricedUp have done some great incentives and offers in terms of pushing prices out. If there's anything with Sergino in it that's in a double that's being promoted, I'd certainly be having a second look at it.
Andy?
Yeah, I mean, when I touched upon what I said on a previous podcast, sometimes we can all scoff at these kind of short ones and just, oh yeah, we'll look elsewhere for value. And actually, we're staring down the barrel of value right in between our eyes most of the time with these short ones, because they just keep winning. And when you look at it, let's say you're going to be 1-2 on Saturday to beat the likes of Edward Stone, Liberty Hunter, etc. They were good horses, but they're not top class. They're not Grade 1 horses. And you've been asked to take a similar kind of price or around that ballpark for him to beat Margeborough. I know which bet I'd rather have. I'd rather take 1-2 about him winning here than 4-7 about him beating Margeborough. I think Margeborough's potentially just as good. And I think that'd be one of the matches of the festival. That's almost going back to the old Bob Zine Noddy's Ride clashes back in the 80s. So yeah, on just a pure point of value, looking at this race at face value and what he's got to achieve, I mean, he's just miles better than this lot, isn't he? So yeah, it's hard to look beyond or hard to make a case out for manufacturing another bet. I suppose if you just take him out of the equation and you look for the obvious forecast route, then you know, you might get a bit of sort of 6-4, 7-4 about Matata, who looks a different horse, actually being held up in contrast to what he said. I'm not necessarily he has to lead now. He was good the other day when he came off the pace at Windsor, as he was making all the running the time before. So yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see what kind of a performance he puts up in comparison to Margeborough last week, and how the bookmakers adjust the price accordingly for the Arkle.
Looking to the Kingmaker now at Warwick, the 205, Loda Sud is the 4-on favourite ahead of Rubaud at 7-2, Tedley at 20-1, and Risking the Ground at 33-1. Andy, I'm assuming in terms of the numbers posted so far, is there anything Loda Sud could do at Warwick on Saturday to insert himself more into the conversation for the Arkle?
Well, I think we've got a really good guide, haven't we, of some description with Robo in the race, because Robo ran in the Corto Star, didn't he? At the Christmas, was it behind? Was it the Corto Star behind Sergino and Ballyburn? Was that the name of the race?
Wayward Lad, I think.
Wayward Lad. It was the Wayward Lad. I always get mixed up with those two. Yeah, the Corto Star was the 3-mile race. Apologies for that. The jukebox man won it. But I mean, he got beat, almost a fence by those two good horses. So if Robo sort of keeps in touch with Loda Sud, which I suspect he will, it'll probably put into context what went on at Kempton, and just shows you how much Loda Sud has probably got to find to get to those two top class horses.
Yeah, anything to glean from this one, Liam?
Not overly so. He has been impressive, and obviously he's 3 from 3s and he over fences. He does have a form line. There is a bit of a form line through Touch Me Not from the Henry VIII. However, he obviously absolutely parted the Birch mid-race, Touch Me Not, and he may well have given Loda Sud a bit more of a fright. There's only a 3-length gap between those two when Loda Sud won there. And then, of course, he's followed Margeborough home by a much bigger distance on the weekend. I think he's a bit of a forgotten horse, but he's forgotten because the other two are so good. So, yeah, you might be playing for a place if 8 turn up here in March. But yeah, a lovely horse, just can't compete with these two top notchers.
And before we let you guys go, Liam, anything else anywhere this weekend that you've got your eye on? Any horses that people should be following or looking to back now for the weekend?
Yeah, there's a couple that have been declared for the big handicap, formerly, of course, the Betfair hurdle, the Newbury hurdle. There's a couple of horses in there. One was put up in my anti-post angle column earlier in the week at a nice price. He has shortened a bit, as you'd expect after declarations. But the two that I do like are both Chris Gordon trained. So the Orkham Risk, who, of course, is a winner of this previously. I'm not sure what price he is with PricedUp, but it'll certainly be a nice double figure price. He won 2 starts ago. It's nice to see him return to form. Of course, he has some decent back form, having been rated around about 147. He's almost a stone below that rating now. I know there might be others that are a little bit more progressive and younger, with more to offer and they're less exposed in this field. But if he has the £5 taken off by Freddie Gordon, I could see him being competitive. That win from 2 starts ago has worked out really well. The 2nd, 3rd and 6th have all come out and won since, and the 4th and 5th have finished runner-up. So that's given that form a bit of substance, and some of those are in this field. So he's the first one, and the second, if people head over to read the column, was Our Champ. So I'm not sure what price he's been installed at after declaration.
20-1.
20-1. So yeah, I wouldn't put anybody off Our Champ either. I think if he's ridden a little bit more conservatively than he has been, but still in a prominent position, he obviously likes it round here. He's pretty consistent, and I won't put anyone off playing those two against the field.
Ocon Risk 25-1, Our Champ 20-1. Andy, anything in that hurdle race or anything else there for you?
Yeah, I've already put up Navajo Indy in my column about 2 or 3 weeks ago after he ran at Windsor. I won't say it was a strange ride at Windsor. He just never really engaged from an early stage. He did really well to finish 4th. His back end sectionals are incredible, really, to almost come from last to 4th and almost looked like winning at the last. Was quite an extraordinary run. He's got a very good record at Newbury. I think he's won twice and finished 2nd on his other run. The form of Jerry Fielding has worked out really well. Still think he's fairly well handicapped off 128. And just to make sure that he doesn't have a little bit of a mid-race crisis like he did at Windsor, the cheek pieces have gone on him, just to give him a bit a bit more pep in his step from an earlier stage. I thought 8-1 currently is a good price for him. Just a couple to keep an eye on as well. One for Cheltenham and one for the weekend. One for Cheltenham is Haiti Kalor, who rather sneakily runs over hurdles here with a view to having a run before the festival. I think he's one of the favourites for the National Hunt Chase. The form of his win at Cheltenham back in December has been boosted by Moon d'Orange, who got well beaten by Rebecca Curtis's charge that day. And I think, it looks for all the world like they're just using this race as a prep for Cheltenham. Want to keep his chase mark down, but it'd be interesting to see how he runs all the same. And the other horse I really like, because he comes out of a very good race at Huntingdon 2 starts ago. The race was won by Van der Poel of Ben Paulins, who clocked a big number. One of the best we've seen so far in the UK that day when he won at Huntingdon. He's gone to win subsequently at Ludlow yesterday. But both Rubber Ball, who finished 3rd, who won at Utoxeter the last time out, and Georgie's Lad from the M. Lavelle stable have both franked the form. And Rubber Ball goes again in the 1:15 at Newbury on Saturday following that Utoxeter win. He's up against Tutti Quanti and one of Nicky Henderson's who won first time out. So we might get a good price about him. So Rubber Ball, if he's the right price, he'd probably be going up in my column in that 1:15 at Newbury.
First price is out 9-2. That's not the price up. That's the first price that has come up with the 2 favourites, 5-4, the pair, 8 runners.
Okay,
happy with that?
Yeah, I'd be more than happy with that, particularly each way. Yeah,
well, I mean, it's got a ridiculous each way shape: 5-4, 5-4, 9-2, then 14-1 bar.
Yeah, I thought, I thought it'd be about a 9-4, 5-2 shot. So yeah, 9-2 is much better than I thought.
Lovely. Right. That's in the 1:15 at Newbury on Saturday. That brings our episode 4 of the Cheltenham Raw to a close. Thank you very much to Liam and to Andy for taking their time and showing their tips, thoughts, and insight on this episode of the Cheltenham Raw. We will be back again next week looking at the weekend's racing and looking ahead and previewing more races at the festival. A reminder that PricedUp are looking after you guys and they are pushing out plenty of the selections here. We've got Copac Deport out to 6-5, industry best price for the Supreme. Final demand for the Turners boosted out to 21-10. That one has the Andy Holding seal of approval. And we have got JetBlue out to 14-1. Andy selection in the Albert Bartlett also pushed out to match the industry best price. So make sure you check out PricedUp. You can find sign up for an offer there. You can find all the boosts every day and across this show as well. Check out oddschecker for all of your fixed odds betting needs, where you can find the best prices, bookie offers, free bets, and plenty more up on site. We'll see you again next week. Thanks to the guys. Enjoy the racing, and please do ensure that you're gambling responsibly.